Welcome to Cox San Diego Connection. I'm your host, Jeff Powers. We have an election in November, and the outcomes of two races in particular are going to have significant impacts on the city of San Diego. We're electing another member for our San Diego City Council, Chris Cate, running against Carol Kim for the District 6 seat. And we have the race for the 52nd Congressional District. Incumbent Scott Peters running against former San Diego City Councilman Carl DeMaio. And we are so pleased to be joined by Mr. DeMaio. Now, thanks for being here, Carl.
Thanks for having me.
How is the campaign going?
Well, it's been so great to lay out our positive vision for taking the reforms that we successfully used in San Diego to turn the city around from the brink of bankruptcy and take those to a national level. We really need to see responsible fiscal leadership in Washington so that we can deal with the national debt crisis. More importantly, we need to get people back to work, which means we have to cut red tape on our small businesses and support our American working families. And finally, we've got to hold government programs accountable for results. Veterans programs obviously is top of mind, but so many programs that can and should be doing better by our communities. If we had accountability, we could get better results.
Can we start with that small business? You were a small business owner. You started a couple of businesses when you were in Washington, D.C. What do we need to do better in San Diego? It was recently named one of the toughest cities for small businesses to thrive and excel. What do we need to do better for small businesses?
It really boils down to three things. First, we've got to cut the red tape so that it's easier to invest and to expand in a company. The red tape is not just regulations, it's punitive tax requirements and mandates and penalties. And so we just have to stand up and say, we've got to support small businesses in particular. Second, we've got to invest in economic infrastructure, whether that's our ports, our border crossing, making sure that we can take advantage of our partnership with Baja California, making sure that we have a strong economic infrastructure to support business. And then finally, third, and most importantly, is you've got to invest in the worker. We have to have quality education, K through 12, plus strong access to college programs and trade schools, so that people can get the skills they need to compete in a 21st century economy. And I talk to business leaders all the time, and they're frustrated that they don't have enough recruits with the skills they need, particularly in the area of science, technology, engineering, and math. And as you know, here in San Diego, our innovation economy requires that we have some of those high-skill individuals to power our economy.
One of the issues right now in Washington is immigration reform, and getting immigration reform, particularly in this part of the world, is so critical, particularly for that job sector. How would you go about working with those fellow congressmen in Washington to get immigration reform passed?
Well, this is one of those, what I say, shiny object issues that both political parties use to beat up the other party, and they actually don't want to solve it. Whether it's the social issues or immigration, they consistently grandstand on these issues and they play to their extremes. I would say that about 75% of the American people agree on a series of immigration reforms that we have to enact. And so first I would say that we have to start with securing the border. You can't have a workable immigration system in this country if there's all sorts of loopholes and people can just bypass the process. Second, Republicans always talk about holding people accountable, individuals accountable for breaking the law. But rarely do we hear them taking on big businesses that benefit from breaking the law on their own accord. So I say let's enforce the law on businesses, and that means expand E-Verify and issue penalties for repeat offenders that take advantage of these individuals. Third, we do have to expand certain types of guest worker programs and visa programs. In particular, those high skill areas that we're lacking in our current economy, science, technology, engineering, and math. We probably need to be looking at expanding those categories rather than what you have today, which is a complete lottery. We should be strategic about those that we invite into this country and build a stronger country on the basis of the types of individuals and skills that we need to make a stronger country. And finally, let's stop the heated rhetoric on this. I think it's absolutely disrespectful the way that both sides talk about the issue. These are real individuals. They're just trying to make a better life for themselves and their families. And I'd like to see some San Diego approach here. San Diego has great diversity, but we also have amazing tranquility. Of all the different groups that live here in San Diego, they all respect each other, and there's a great harmony here, and we are pretty laid back when we deal with some of these issues. So I'd like to see that happen in Washington, and I'm willing to take on my own party on this issue and many other issues when I feel that they are bringing the wrong tone to the table, when they're not solving the problem rather than just pointing out the faults of the other side, and when they're not focused on the right issues that people really care about rather than some sideshow issues that they tend to get off on.
I think it's not a stretch to say that you were a valued reformer when you were in the city council. You were a watchdog for pension waste and wanted to see reforms in the system. When you look and turn your focus from San Diego to Washington, you see some similar issues happening, not necessarily with pension, but with waste, I think. Where do you turn your attention to in terms of how are you going to solve those issues, and can one man solve a system that is so broken?
No, one person can't, but I got this question all the time when I was running for city council. In 2008, they said, look, the city's on the brink of bankruptcy. How can one person make any sort of change there? And when I took office, I was on the losing end of a 2-6 minority. It was myself and Kevin Faulconer, 2 Republicans and 6 Democrats. But I didn't see a Democrat or Republican way to fill a pothole. I said, let's find good ways to deliver quality services. And don't worry about where the idea came from. If it came from a Democrat, great. Work with them. Let's get it done. Let's get it implemented. Because we should be measured on results. And so the philosophy that I took to address the city's financial crisis, I think is the type of philosophy that we need to take in Washington. Don't worry about party label. Let's focus on the core priorities that people have. Let's be willing to get ideas implemented. If 75% of the American people agrees with an idea, why not get members of Congress to act on it? But all too often, both political parties use important issues to try to punish or embarrass the other side. They put poison pills into bills and say, haha, now you have to vote for or against. Let's stop the games. Let's focus on actually getting things done. That was my approach on City Council. It's going to be my approach in Washington.
Solutions. Carl DeMao, thank you for your time today, and good luck with the election in November.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you. As promised, incumbent Scott Peters will be joining us next to discuss the race for the 52nd congressional seat. We're coming right back.
In 1945, Navy widow Barbara Cox christened the USS Midway, which served America for 47 years. Today, 45,000 students a year participate in field trips and educational programs through Midway University. USS Midway Museum salutes Cox Communications and the James M. Cox Foundation for a $1.5 million grant to expand Midway's educational programs as they build a bridge between the greatest generation and America's future generations.
Every day, we're inspired by students' passion for learning and their desire to pursue higher education. That's why Cox Communications and its employees award over $75,000 in scholarships to our Cox Scholars. Cox Care Scholars are selected from San Diego County for their ability to succeed despite adversity.
I will be paying my way through college myself, so it's pretty nice to get a scholarship to help me focus a little bit more on academics and less on how I'm going to pay for academics.
Congratulations, Cox Scholars. We wish you great success.
Welcome back. He served as the first president for the San Diego City Council. He was a port commissioner, and in 2013 was elected to Congress to represent the 52nd District. And he joins us now. Thank you for being here, Scott Peters, Congressman. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
How is the campaign going? Let's start there.
Well, it's a lot of work. We feel very confident if we remind people how the approach I've taken, which is to be bipartisan, to be independent, fourth most independent Democrat in Congress. That's what people wanted. We feel like we contrast that with my opponent, who's got a very much more divisive record. We'll be fine.
You, on your website, you talk about job growth and your strategy for that growth. And there's a couple of points I wanted to talk to you about. One being immigration status and making it easier for those qualified to get work in this country. Can you talk about that?
Well, if you saw from the past months, the situation at the border is really disastrous. And we know also that a lot of our high technology companies need people from around the world to come here and do the great work that Qualcomm and Solar Turbines and other companies here in San Diego are doing. We have to fix the immigration system. There was a bipartisan vote in the Senate to fix the immigration system. Had the support of 69 senators, Republicans and Democrats. We can't get a vote on that in the House of Representatives, but we know if we passed it, it would be 5.4% growth over the next 20 years. It would mean a reduction of over $1 trillion in our budget deficit and would help strengthen Social Security because a lot of that revenue that's bleeding out would be coming in. That's the kind of approach I think we need to take.
Let's talk about simplifying the tax code.
Sure.
Right? If you do that and you and you shut down some loopholes, you say on your website you'll create a 6% wage increase.
Yeah.
How is that?
One of the most important things we can do is, as anyone who's dealt with the tax code knows, is it's too complicated. You have to hire somebody almost if you have any kind of complexity in your tax code. We'd like to make it simpler. We'd like to make it fairer. We'd like to make sure that people aren't taking advantage of deductions that actually tend to drive jobs overseas. Unfortunately, the Republican chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Dave Camp, produced a tax reform policy that would have lowered rates and got rid of loopholes. The response of the Speaker of the House was literally, he said, blah, blah, blah. He said it was dead. And that's the kind of attitude we can't have. We really need people who work together to get things done. And that's been my approach. That's the only reason I get on the plane every week to go to Washington, D.C. and leave this great area of San Diego.
I would imagine someone of your experience, business, professional, few things surprise you. Have you been surprised by the gridlock in Washington?
Yes, I have. I've been surprised by how partisan it is. From the moment we got there, it looked like things were being sent to us to vote on just to win the next election, not really serious about making legislation. When the Republicans shut down the government over Obamacare, I knew they were upset about Obamacare, but my approach has been, it's not perfect, let's fix it. There's just no excuse for shutting down the government. And that kind of thing has really surprised me, and it's discouraging for someone from San Diego, where we have a culture of collaboration and cooperation, and someone who's been in local government where we actually try to get things done.
This is a big college town per se. There's a lot of great universities here. The Student Loan Refinancing Act is a big part of what you've done in Washington. Why is that important for students? They graduate, they have a mountain of debt, but it's important for them to be able to get out of that, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And student debt is now second to mortgage debt. It's ahead of credit card debt. There's more student loan debt than credit card debt in the United States. And that makes it really hard on families and on young people who are starting out. I've got a bill that would allow you to refinance all your student loans down to 4%. Whatever they're at, however old they are, would help you get out from under that mountain of debt. Because what's happening is these young people are holding back from starting their careers, starting their families, buying houses, and that's holding back economic activity. It's a real drag on the economy, and it's certainly a drag on these young people who have to get started.
Why 4%? How did you get to that number?
Well, the money costs the federal government just around 3.5%, almost 4%. So the idea is we shouldn't be making, if you want to cover the cost of administration, that's fine. We shouldn't be making money. There's no reason people should be paying 8, 9, 10% on student loans. That's just gouging people when the cost of money of the federal government is so much less.
We talked about immigration originally. What can be done in Washington to get a bipartisan bill passed for immigration reform for this country?
Well, the Senate passed one. All we need is a vote in the House of Representatives. We're having a difficult problem getting the Speaker to let us vote on things. The last thing we worked on before we left was wildfires.
Right.
And the way the federal government funds wildfires is idiotic, because what we do is when we run out of money for firefighting, we take money out of prevention to put it into firefighting, and that makes the fires next year, because we're not working on prevention, that much worse.
I think all you needed was a vote on that, didn't you? And everybody went home,
52 Republican and 52 Democratic co-sponsors. The president's behind it, but it got caught up in the border politics, and now we can't even get a vote on it. And so that's the kind of obstreperousness, of contrarianism, of politics that we just don't need, and that San Diegans sent me to fight, and that's what I'm working on.
So when you look at San Diego now from a bit of a distance, you probably have a different view on this community than you did before, maybe because of, looking at it from a different lens. What are some of the priorities that we should be focusing in on that maybe you weren't aware of, or that things that we should be looking at?
Well, I've never appreciated so much living in San Diego, because we have this great culture of collaborativeness and cooperation, but we're really affected by the federal government. A quarter of our jobs are related to the military. So we need to make sure that San Diego continues to play a role in national defense, both because we're proud of it, but also because it's important to our economy. We're also a center of scientific research and innovation, and much of that depends on the National Institutes of Health and grant programs that are funded by the federal government. We need to make sure that we get away from sequester and the kind of silly budget ideas that have cut into those parts of our economy, because it's a partnership, and we want the federal government to do its part.
All right. Congressman Scott Peters, nice to see you this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Good luck in November.
Thank you.
All right. The 52nd congressional race isn't the only critical seat up for grabs in November. When we sit down, we'll come back and sit down with Chris Cate, who's running for the district's 6th seat on the San Diego City Council. We'll be right back.
At Cox Communications, we're not just giving back. We're investing in our future by opening doors of opportunity and expanding the learning potential for thousands of students. For decades, Cox and the Cox Cares Foundation have supported education throughout Southern California through scholarships, nonprofit grants to help educate children, support for our teachers, and by providing computers and internet access to students and families. For more information on Cox's community involvement, visit cox-cares.org.
District 6 includes the communities of Claremont, Mira Mesa, Kearny Mesa, and the southernmost section of Rancho Penasquitos. Chris Cate is a Republican. He's a taxpayer advocate, having been the vice president of the San Diego Taxpayers Association. He also served as policy director for then City Councilman Kevin Faulconer. And now Chris is running for the District 6 seat, and we are so pleased to have him joining us now. Thanks for being here, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and then why you're running for City Council.
I'm a native San Diegan. I was born here, grew up here, went to school here, graduated from the University of San Diego, and while I was attending USD, a high school friend and myself started our own small business. We started a small auto glass replacement business in Kearny Mesa and did that for a number of years while I was getting my degree, and it was a fantastic experience to sign the front of a paycheck and understand what small business owners have to go through on a daily basis at a relatively young age. And following that, I started my career in public policy at the San Diego County Taxpayers Association. Did a stint working for Councilmember Faulconer, but as through the association and through working with Councilmember Faulconer, I got to be intimately knowledgeable about all the issues going on in the city of San Diego, helped lead the effort on a number of reform efforts that voters within the city of San Diego passed, whether it be managed competition, pension reform, defeating the $500 million sales tax increase. Got to be a part of all those issues and understand really how to get things done at City Hall.
Let's talk about some of those issues. Managed competition, for example, that's always been a big one. Your work with Mayor, then City Councilman Kevin Faulconer, instrumental in getting that sort of through and getting it passed. What do you think about some of these issues facing the city going forward, particularly managed competition?
I think it's a great tool that we have in our tool belt to make sure that government is operating as efficiently and effectively as possible. Part of my time working for Councilman Kevin Faulconer at that time was on the city's audit committee, which doesn't get a lot of attention as a committee in the city of San Diego, but it's a great committee made up of council members and public members who are charged with overseeing the operations of the city, whether it be finances or the efficiencies of departments throughout the city. And so I got to become intimately involved in those issues and making sure that we are doing our best to operate as efficiently as possible, make sure that we are stretching every tax dollar we get to the fullest extent possible. And managed competition is just one of those tools to allow for efficiencies and savings and having those dollars get reinvested back into our neighborhoods, which is what it's all about.
Having that knowledge of how the city works and the challenges that the city faces. We've had a long history of political challenges in San Diego. What are some of the challenges that you'll try to solve, or some of the things that you're going to be looking for if you're elected?
I see more as opportunities as opposed to challenges. And what I've been talking about on the campaign trail are, I really don't have a 1, 2, and 3. It's more of a 1A, 1B, and 1C because they're all important. But first and foremost, we need to make sure that we're investing in our infrastructure as a city. We need to make sure that dollars are being invested back into our streets, sidewalks, storm drains, parks, all those things that have been neglected for a number of years now because of the financial crisis we are in, and we need to make sure we coordinate and focus on those issues. As well as public safety, police and response times, making sure that we have enough sworn personnel on the streets to make sure that we are living in safe neighborhoods. And thirdly is jobs. Luckily, the district that I'm hoping to represent is a microcosm as a city as a whole when it comes to the types of jobs that are out there. We have high-tech and biotech hubs in Sereno Valley. We have industrial manufacturers in Kearny Mesa. We have small businesses in Mira Mesa and down the Convoy corridor. We have a lot of folks that are trying to be entrepreneurs and start their own businesses, and we need to make sure that we're focusing on having a culture at the city that we're open for business and that we're doing the most that we can to encourage folks to start their business or expand here in San Diego.
Let's stay on that theme because there's been a big fight about minimum wage in San Diego and the amount it will cost to employ a minimum wage worker. Where do you stand on that? And obviously the vote on the council, we've seen the vote. The mayor said he's going to veto that vote. Where do you stand on minimum wage?
I'm opposed to the increase that the mayor vetoed, making sure that we are not placing ourselves at a competitive disadvantage to other cities. Just in our region alone, we had the state increase. Now we're going above and beyond that. And we shouldn't be doing things that, in my opinion, are preventing folks from encouraging to start that business or create that one additional job here in San Diego. My focus while the council is going to be, how do we get the nearly 100,000 individuals in our region that don't have a job to get a job? That's, I think, should be our focus as a city, and trying to get them to get those jobs, start their own business, be entrepreneurs, whatever it takes to get them to be involved and getting that tax money back into our city that we can reinvest. And if we're focused on creating jobs and getting those individuals employed, I think it's better for our economy, it's better for our city, it's better for our neighborhoods, because they'll get the benefits of those tax dollars.
How has the city's relationship with the state changed or evolved over the years? I mean, there's been, state came in and took the redevelopment money. Now there's talk of creating tax sanctuaries, if you will, for startup companies in communities to get some of that money back. I think I know where you would stand on that.
Right.
But that relationship, is it better or is it strained?
I think at this point in time, it's great, because we have the Assembly Majority Leader is in San Diego, Toni Atkins, and so having her be from San Diego, representing San Diego in Sacramento, I think puts us ahead of the curve of where normally we would be behind Los Angeles or San Francisco or others. And so I think we have a real opportunity with her being the leader in Sacramento to come up with these creative ideas and solutions. And that's what we need to be focused on, is making sure that we're always not being reactive as a city, but we're being proactive with ideas and solutions on how the state can be a partner on some things, whether it be these tax incentive districts or improving our CEQA processes, the environmental review processes for businesses and what have you. We need to be more solution oriented, and that's what I hope to be on the council.
You are running for City Council District 6. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck in November.
Thank you.
All right. Chris Cate, of course, not running unopposed. Coming up, she has been an educator, teacher, and community organizer. Carol Kim will be here next. We'll be right back.
Do your children have what they need to succeed in school? Students with a computer and internet at home have a higher graduation rate than those without. And while more teachers assign homework online, having internet access at home is critical to the education and future of our youth. If your child is part of the National School Lunch Program and you have not had Cox Internet, you may qualify for the Connect to Compete program to get discounted internet service. Call 855-222-3252 or visit connecttocompete.org/Cox to apply.
Welcome back to Cox San Diego Connection. Carol Kim has spent her life teaching, raising 2 kids, and being a community leader. She is now taking those skills and experiences and using them to run for City Council. She is in the District 6 race, and she joins us now. Thanks for being here, Carol.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too.
Yeah, how's the campaign going?
It's going great.
Going great. Tell us a little bit about yourself for those that may not be familiar with you.
Sure. So I am, well, people won't be familiar with me probably because I'm new to this. I've never worked in politics before, so I'm a total political outsider. My background is in education and human services. So I started off as a public school teacher, as you mentioned, and I did that for several years. Worked in HIV prevention for a few years as well, and for the past 7.5 years, I've been working for an education nonprofit here in San Diego. And what I do is I write grants for public school districts, I do trainings for teachers and principals, and I do evaluations of grant-funded programs, meaning I go into school districts and I help them measure their programs for efficacy and success and whether or not they're meeting their goals. And if they're not, I help them figure out why, get them back on track, get them effective and accountable.
So let's talk about accountability.
Yes.
Getting into politics,
Sure.
There's a lot of accountability that may be needed in San Diego.
Absolutely.
Why getting into politics in San Diego?
Why? Because exactly what you said. So, you know, San Diego is a great place, but it just has this lousy track record and history of not doing a good job of like the accountability, and really being able to create a political environment that allows for a more inclusive atmosphere. You know, I really want to see the way we do business in City Hall change. When I walk doors and I talk to voters, what I recognize right away are two things. One, people don't feel engaged in the process. You know, it's really hard to get people to vote because they feel like it doesn't matter, that their voices aren't being heard. And it's not because it's various reasons, but essentially they feel like the system is what it is and there's nothing they can do about it. So
one voice won't matter.
Exactly. So I want to make sure that we are actually taking that back. You know, I'm an ordinary person. I'm just a community member and that sort of thing. So I want to make sure we're taking that back, that we're going in there and we're providing meaningful opportunities for people to participate and have a voice. And that also means that we're doing things like providing and creating systems and implementing them to create accountability for our city programs and our projects and our contracts.
So let's talk about those systems, and you've been deeply involved in the education system in San Diego.
Yeah.
And the issues with the education system, I think, in San Diego, well documented. How would you apply those experiences you've learned to City Hall?
So that's a really good question. One of the things that I do is I go in and I'm supposed to help create collaboration and coalitions between all the various stakeholders. One of the things I do is I go into schools, especially high schools that are underperforming, and usually those issues are related to poor school climate and culture, just a lack of trust and openness and communication and the willingness to work together between all the various stakeholders. So my job, believe it or not, is to create buy-in for that and to create a sense of community within these dysfunctional school systems. And so, you know, it's about, again, building bridges of trust, building that communication, and allowing people to work together effectively. And along with that, hand in hand, is creating data-driven, measurable systems that allow us to really track what people are supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be doing it, what commitments they've made to get it done, and when they're going to get it done by. And then, you know, if that's not happening, saying, okay, these are tax dollars you're using to do this, let's get it done. And if not, let's figure out why it's not happening and revisit that and work on it.
You're also a community leader. Talk about your experiences in the community and how you have inspired and been a catalyst for change.
Well, you know, we've been working, my community leadership has really been at the very grassroots level. So it's really been about getting ordinary people, again, to feel like they have a meaningful say, or at least an ability or an opportunity to exercise their power in the political process and in the issues and areas that they care about. So one of the issues that I've worked on a lot is comprehensive immigration reform, which is something that, you know, is a real problem. I mean, immigration are obviously, especially recently, it's been an issue that's got all kinds of...
Been in the news.
Yeah, it's been in the news a lot.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to address it, and we need to have leaders that are willing to address it. And the fact is, most Americans, the vast majority of them, want to see those systems fixed. And you know, the American story is an immigrant story, and we've got to figure out how to do this better. So as a child of immigrants, you know, my own parents came over to the United States in 1975. You know, I was born the year after, so I was a bicentennial baby. But you know, they came over here with $700 between the two of them, like $350 each. You know, and they literally, you know, my dad had his degree in chemical engineering. My mom had a nursing degree. She used to work as a nurse in Korea. They came over here because my dad had a job offer, which fell through, and that meant that, you know, they were stuck in LA. And they were like, well, what do we do now? And so my dad started his career here as a day laborer, and my mom as the lowest end of a tier at a nursing home. And they did that, but while they were doing that in the daytime, my mom in the evenings would go to the local fabric store and buy the closeout remnants, you know, fabric, and she would make baby pillows and blankets and sell them at the swap meet on the weekends. So that's what they did, you know, and they built a business that way, little by little, saving up, working hard, and that turned into a clothing store, and that then turned into a clothing manufacturing company. And
so I would assume that a vote for Carole Kim in November means a vote for accountability and a vote for keeping folks honest.
Absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely. I mean, that's so important to me. And the last couple of years have been rough in terms of whether or not people trust the political process.
Yeah,
you know, we've had some real disappointments, obviously, in both our leaders and other issues. So I'd like to be able to say, we can take it back.
All right, Carol Kim, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
That is going to do it for this edition of Cox San Diego Connection. We do appreciate you watching. Hopefully we've provided some insight into who you might think will best serve San Diego for the 52nd congressional seat and the District 6 City Council seat. I'm Jeff Powers. Be good to one another.